We are at that point again where everyone picks a team and then gets upset over what they think are poor calls. We all know what I'm talking about. Football, the sport where it's hard to figure out what's happening, and then once you do, the point system is still confusing. But the sport as we know it today has faced many challenges over its existence. Some of them good, some of them bad, but today we're looking at it all from start up until now, and the competition to be the top professional league. So, let's get to it. Football, to us Americans, or confusion to the rest of the world, is nearly completely unrelated to the use of a foot. The few times the ball is actually kicked is at a turnover or a field goal attempt. One could try to argue that the players use their foot while running, but that would be a strong argument for practically any other sport. The basic premise of the sport is to get the ball from one end of the field to the end zone on the other side using a mixture of a little bit of throwing mixed with a majority running. If one team does manage to make a touchdown, they receive 6 points and then have two options. The first is to attempt a field goal, which is worth a whopping 1 point, or they could try for a 2-point conversion, which is worth 2 points, and can be achieved by running the ball into the end zone or throwing it in, meaning the most points one team can get in a single possession is 8. Now, if you survived that explanation, let's get into the game's history. Deep down, football is just a mixture of rugby and soccer that has been warped and changed since the first game in 1869. However, this first game wasn't really a football game. The teams had 25 players compared to today's 11, and the ball could not be carried. These rules would be altered, and the sport slowly became the one we know today, with a man by the name of Walter Camp now being referred to as the father of football, securing many changes such as team size. Football was, and still is, a very violent sport. Between 1900 and 1905, at least 45 football players were killed, with many more killed before this. The most deaths in a year came in 1905, with a grand total of 15. This was enough for current President Theodore Roosevelt to threaten to ban the game unless some serious changes were made. In response to this, 62 colleges, who were like the head of football at that point, met to discuss potential solutions. Eventually, this meeting ended with the formation of the National Collegiate Athletic Association, which would help with standardized rules and improve safety. Up until the 1890s, football was only played between colleges or as a pastime sport, with no real professional league being put into place for another 30 years or so. The first time someone was paid to play football was in 1892, when Pudge Heffelfinger was paid about $500 to play a single game for the Allegheny Athletic Association. This sum is worth about $16,000 in today's money, so it appears football players have always been paid a lot. It would be another 28 years after this until the dominant professional league would be founded. This league, that we know today as the NFL, was originally founded in 1920 as the American Professional Football League, with a few goals in mind. These included the ending of the bidding war over players, ending the use of college students in more professional games, and the end of paying players to leave a team. By implementing these rules and organizing games, the NFL soon found itself as the top football league by 1922. However, even after the rise of the NFL, college football was still more popular, so in order to put themselves on top, the NFL had one of their teams, the Pottsville Maroons, go against an all-stars team from Notre Dame, giving the NFL its much-needed boost to become the most dominant football place. I don't really know what else to call them. Should I just say that they're the highest football authority after that? I don't know. Moving on, the popularity of football would continue to grow, and it would become the most popular sport in the United States by the mid-1960s. Even with football's massive popularity, the NFL faced a massive challenge that began in 1960. This was the founding of the American Football League, a competitor to the sport giant of the NFL. As all things do, the AFL began in relative obscurity, but it quickly showed itself to be a big competitor to the NFL. One factor that greatly contributed to the rise of the AFL was the TV contract with ABC. They also made changes to the sport that made it more enjoyable for the average viewer, such as an official time clock and player names on jerseys. The rivalry between the two leagues would continue to heat up with disagreements over who could have what players, and eventually the NFL would approach the AFL to discuss the possibility of a merger that would end the fight over players and would make a place for a championship game at the end of the season, with both leagues agreeing and the merger taking effect in 1970. Since the merge of the two football superpowers, any attempts to launch rival football leagues have come nowhere near the success of the NFL or the AFL, mainly because the NFL is just so big and covers practically every state. No leagues have been able to survive more than 3 seasons, the main reason being because of their lack of funds to pay players. The most notable attempts were those of the World Football League, which played for 2 seasons, and the United States Football League, which played for 3 seasons. However, this one wasn't originally intended to be a competitor to the NFL, but team owners wanted to challenge the NFL's dominance, which led to inflated salaries and eventually a lawsuit against the NFL for $1.5 billion. This lawsuit was successful, but the NFL only had to pay like 3 out of $1.5 billion, so not very successful. The US is definitely where football is most popular. There have been leagues outside of the US, such as NFL Europa, which had teams from Germany, the Netherlands, and the UK. This didn't really last though, as there just isn't as much interest in the sport outside of the US. However, there is still external interest, and during the regular season, there are around 5 games played over in Europe, with the possibility of a team being placed in London sometime in the future. We'll see though. Whether you're a big fan or just a casual viewer, there's no denying the impact it has had on American culture. But for now, that's the history, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.